celebrating everything that goes into cosplay. And we've got an awesome guest here with us this week to help us do just that. Joining me on GameOn today is Abby Darkstar. Abby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. It is a gorgeous day here in California.
That is awesome. So, Abby, what is it about cosplay that caught your interest?
For me, it was originally my dad. I mean, not that my dad got me into cosplay, but my dad inspired my geeky hobbies. Growing up, he was at home with me and my mom worked, and we would watch Battlestar Galactica, the original, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all the cartoons. We'd sit and we'd watch Star Trek and everything in between. So when I was in school, I was in theater from about middle school all the way into college. And after I stopped doing theater, I was like, I still had that creative juices. And about that same time, I was like, hey, there's something called comic book conventions. And I walked in, and I was like, there's people in costume. I can do this. And that's how it started. The next con I went to, I dressed up as Anita Blake. And even though nobody knew who I was, I had a blast.
And that's the funny thing. I'm glad you mentioned about the whole theater background, because I'm noticing a lot of people who get into cosplay or costuming have some sort of either theater background or acting background behind them, that it's that creative outlet for them.
It is. I mean, for me, I love to act. I miss it. There are times when I miss that, just going on stage and saying lines and being dramatic. But it takes a lot of time, and not everybody has time for every night rehearsals of 4 to 6 hours or performances. It takes a lot of dedication. So you can, in some ways, cosplay is theater light. At least it is for me. I can go in and I can do photo shoots and I can act a little bit, when I'm doing characters, and kind of get the edge off. I hate to make it sound like it's an addiction.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of people get that sort of stimulation from doing this. It's especially when you get in front of a crowd setting, like at a convention, at like, say, Comic-Con or say WonderCon or something like that. And you get up in front of people in these costumes, and it's a riot just to see the reactions you're going to get.
It is. I mean, for myself, when you're getting ready for Comic-Con and you're up for like 24 hours straight because you're trying to finish casting or molding or something, and your seams aren't working, and you're like, oh, and you're about to like just throw it up in the air and be done with it. When you get in costume and you get in front of people and people are like, oh, that's so cool, it makes all those hours of work and no sleep and crying worth it. And it is fun to play off of people. Like, I've had guys when I'm in Poison Ivy be like, oh, hey, Poison Ivy, don't give me a kiss. It's like, oh, are you sure you don't want to die today? It's fun to mess with people. Or, when I wore my female Master Chief, messing with people, I'd be like, oh, you better go, or I'm going to snipe your ass. So it is fun.
And I just got to say, going through some of the costumes that you have, I mean, just looking through the list, like, Indy Abby Jones, Poison Ivy. There was that awesome set that you did about Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff. Just awesome costumes that would have taken so much work to get these all put together. And I guess, what is the inspiration to you? Where does it all come from?
It really depends. Like the Indy Abby Jones, when my husband and I first started dating, he was a big Indiana Jones fan. Of course, I am too. Grew up with the series, and he wanted to wear his costume again, and I wanted to wear something as well, but I didn't want to do a Marion. I like her, but at the same time, Marion can get on your nerves, and she's like, Indy! And you're like, oh, stop. So I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, what about a female Indiana Jones? And then I started doing research, and it just came together. Different stuff happens either because I like the character itself, or I like the design of a female or male character, or it just seems like fun to do. I mean, it really is by costume basis. There are some characters who I've seen pictures of, and I'm like, I don't know who this person is, but it makes me get into the character. There's a couple of animes that I've seen the designs for, and I've fallen in love with the costumes. And then I start watching the anime, and I'm like, I want to do this. So it really depends on what it is, but it takes a lot of love. So for me, if I don't at least really love the design or get to love the character, I don't normally do costumes like that.
And I'm actually glad you brought up anime there, because that brings up one of those big issues that you see with cosplay or costuming, where you see either a Western background to the costume or an Eastern background to the costume. What's your thoughts on that?
As far as like the term cosplay or costuming?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I've said this before, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble here, but hey. To me, it's come to the point, it's like potato. It used to be back in the day, if you were doing anime costumes and dressing up, you did cosplay because you would pretend to be the character. And this is, back, 10 years ago or so. And then costumers were people who did mostly comic books or other sorts of things, not anime related. And costumers were more either they assembled their costumes or they didn't make everything in anime, you made all your costumes. I think at this point, the terms are interchangeable. Now, some people are like, I hate the term cosplay and it's costuming. And you know what? If it's recognizable and you understand what I'm doing when I say either term, you're good by me. I don't care.
So, looking at the different styles of costumes, like, say, from an anime background or from a comic book, sci-fi, all the different areas you find from Western culture, which do you prefer? Which way would you rather design a costume for?
Oh. See, that's a hard thing to answer because, again, it's about the character and about the design. I do go more towards some Western costumes as far as comic books and video games, just because even though I love anime, a lot of times the characters can get on your nerves. So I love certain animes, but others I'm not such big fans of. I definitely have to say I'm more of a Western person because I have a much more grounding in comics and sci-fi than I do in anime. Although I've watched tons and tons of anime, but I've tended to be more old school anime. Ghost in the Shell is one of my favorites, especially, the TV series. I like Scrapped Princess, one of my favorites. Love me some old school Sailor Moon. I like the kind of stuff I grew up with more so than I do the newer stuff. Never been a real big Naruto fan or anything like that. Although I do have a weakness for Vampire Knight, which everybody teases me. They're like, that's like Twilight for anime. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I can't help it. Although I'm loving Queen's Blade, the original, not the Revolution, but the Queen's Blade, the series that came out before. It's a guilty pleasure.
I think from a lot of guys, that's a guilty pleasure as well.
Yeah, I don't know what my excuse is.
So, another aspect then, we've talked about the idea of spending all of those hours making the costumes. We've talked about the aspects of getting up in front of people at the conventions and showing off the costumes, showing off what you've worked on and all the effort you've put into them. Is there a one way or another that you prefer? Do you prefer making the costumes or do you prefer showing them off?
I think it kind of goes hand in hand for me. I enjoy the creative aspect of it. I enjoy, if I can't make something, I enjoy having a community around me that I can say, hey, Twisted World, you know how to do awesome leather stuff. Can I commission you to do some leather stuff? Hey, Punished Props. Hey, you. I love that interaction, but it's building it. It's bringing it all together because that's part of the creative process for me. Taking an image and going, okay, how am I going to make this reality? The Kotobukiya Ivy that I did, for me, I had a statue and that's it. It's like, how do you take this animated thing and make it look realistic? So I love that challenge, but there's nothing like getting up in front of a crowd. And for me, like at San Diego, when I go and see these artists and stuff that have created the figure I've done, going, that is what she's supposed to look like. That happened to me at San Diego 2011 when I did Arkham Asylum Poison Ivy. I was walking around as much as I could in the prosthetics and the paint and everything. And all of a sudden these guys come up to me and they're just like staring me up and down. I'm like, hi, how are you? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, yes, what? And they were the creative development team for the game. And they're like, this is what we wanted. So those moments make the time and the effort and the money worth it.
That's amazing. That is an awesome story to tell. So when you have moments like that, really, what sort of tips would you give someone looking to get into costume design, looking to get into cosplay? Obviously, this isn't easy work to accomplish.
No. The first thing I'm going to say is, be realistic. Be patient. When I first started, like I said, my first convention, nobody knew who I was. I pulled things out of my closet, altered things off of eBay, did whatever to kind of lend some credibility to the character. I commissioned items. I had people help me out. My first Chun-Li costume that I'm redoing right now, without the help of God Saves the Queen Fashions, who sent me the costume to finish, because she had started the original pieces, and then she said, here's the sleeves, here's the collar, how to do it. Go for it. It was my real first time doing anything like that. And my friend Terry, who came over to save me, it wouldn't have happened. So be patient, learn techniques, look at things online, find tutorials, ask questions. I have people all the time on my Facebook send me questions going, this is what I want to make. What do you think? And I'll say, hey, well, what's your budget? What are you going for? How do you want super accurate, or are you just there to dance around in costume? I mean, it's all according to what people's goals are. I would say have fun with it. Realize that the first time you make a costume isn't going to be the same from 3 years down the road. It's a growing process. I'm still learning so much, especially, now that I'm getting into mold making and sculpting and, learning how to sew better. That's the correct term. I take classes all the time on sewing and how to get to learn better. I'm pestering people all the time. How do I do this? What do I do? It's a process, and understand that it is not a cheap process. I mean, there have been creative techniques developed, working with foam, working with different materials to make something cheaper, but it's still, trial and error, which will happen, is expensive, especially when you're buying, mold making materials or etc. But it can be done.
Abby, thank you very much for joining us today. If people wanted to find out more about you, where should they go?
Well, my Facebook page is the area I update the most, facebook.com/Abby Darkstar. I tweet a lot, and that's Abby Darkstar. Usually my username is Abby Darkstar, so you can find me on different mediums, Tumblr, DeviantArt, etc. But my Facebook page is probably the easiest to find me at, and the one I'm mostly babbling on. I try to babble quite frequently. My husband and I do have another page. It's Keabtium at KEABTIUM, which is our joint page where we post up a lot of progress on the props we're making and etc. But yeah, those areas.
Abby, a pleasure having you on GameOn today.
Thank you for having me.
That was cosplay artist and performer Abby Darkstar. I'm Jeff Johnson. You're listening to GameOn. A little bit of the old, a little bit of the new.
I am assuming direct control.
And everything in between. You're listening to Game On GameNTrain.com.